this is the bit, isn't it? That confuses me. It's like, did we choose to come here to get this sorted out, or is this just seems a little unfair, doesn't it? That you know, we seem to be here and there's this parasite messing up our experience.
And, you know, I know in my own life, the times that I've made major changes, it was like it became more painful not to change than to change. That was when I made big changes.
You know, it's this whole ridiculous narrative of, it's, you know, it's an unsafe world, there's not enough for you, it's scary, everyone's out to get you, and clearly the old civilization was completely the opposite to that. It was all about empowerment, like literally.
Cosmic resonance, I think they called that one, or
cosmic
something
resonance, that's a better name.
Real science, you can actually produce free electricity, and this is part of what Tesla was doing, is the differential between the top of the spire to the ground actually creates an electrical differential that you then connect to another wire that goes into the ground, your grounding. Put that into the third phase in your circuit, and then you have a bell ringing circuit, and that actually produces plasma electricity out of the air. It's real technology. These things actually function producing electricity. It's crazy.
The movies are the truth and the news is the lies. They've completely flipped it.
You know, when you look at everything with new eyes and you come across information like she was born into a very wealthy family with elite connections, you know, it means something very different now to me than it would have even a few years ago. And it's our free will that they've really also messed with, because we've been lied to and we react based on lies. And just getting their independence and end up in civil wars for 20, 30 years happens a lot.
Because we keep choosing to pick up the gun and use it on ourselves instead of building and uniting and accepting that we are one people, one spirit, one harmony on one plane that together, united, can achieve anything we dream of.
So do you want to, you know, wake up, or do you want to just keep going along because to change is too difficult?
And then give them pieces of information that they will then pursue themselves and look into, and then they'll wake themselves up.
I was going to mention, it's the whole red pill, blue pill of the Matrix. I mean, that of the movie. And you can consider that movie as a documentary because they're telling us something about what's happening here. So do you want to, you know, wake up, or do you want to just keep going along because to change is too difficult? Wake up.
All right, we're live. There's no Paul Cook, there's no Campbell, but there is Michelle Gibson. We are still live on Campbell's channel, though, and Paul might be popping in. Sadly, he had something come up, but we will be back with him next Friday at this time, hopefully. Michelle, how are you today, sister?
I'm doing great. This is actually a great time for me. It's middle of the day where I live. And apparently it's 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning where Cambell is. And so we're trying to work out this scheduling across time zone things. So bear with us. But we'll have a good show today.
Indeed. And who knows? We might just wake Cambell from his sleep and have him sleepwalk into here. But if you're sleeping in Australia, that's okay. You'll catch the replay. Quite a lot of topics today to discuss. I guess I'll kind of let you take it away. Did you want to present a screen, or what should we do here?
Sounds good to me. Because we're going to cover a number of topics that are interrelated. And I want to start with geopolymer, which was the topic that we were going to go over with Paul today, as well as some others. And we're going to go over it again with Paul next time, because I know what a geopolymer is. I know that we're surrounded by geopolymers that we think are natural formations, and they're actually man-made, which is what a geopolymer is. And I think Paul, with his work, is probably far more knowledgeable on that particular subject, but I can go into a little bit and show some recent examples from work that I've done, and then talk a little bit about my own background in terms of how
There we
I
go. We've
even.
got Paul with us
Hey,
now.
Paul. Welcome.
Right? Trying to bait him in, trying to get, I know he might be watching, so we're just trying to bait him in. He's got the link.
Okay, great. So I want to talk a little bit about how I got into this, because, you know, basically it's things that I started becoming aware of when I was very young, but it was long before I was conscious of the information I'm sharing now. It was experiences that I had, places I went, things that I read, and just a lifelong fascination, I would say, in possibly hidden history, but megalithic structures. And I would say it was megaliths that really got my interest, because you see the same things in South America that you see in Turkey. Just two examples. I mean, the exact same things. And so that was my entry point. And up until a few years ago, there really wasn't that much information on anything outside of the conventional narrative. You know, they really can't explain how they did it, but
Right?
somehow they did it. And, you know, they come up with crazy explanations. And so just kicking off with the geopolymer topic just a little bit. What I do is, if I don't know something, I look it up. So this morning I was just looking around for geopolymer, you know, because like I said, I don't have extensive knowledge, but I have enough knowledge to know that we're looking at something that's not naturally made. And so I found an abstract from an article about megalithic blocks in Pumapunku and Tiwanaku, Bolivia. And for anybody that's interested in hidden history, Graham Hancock's book, Fingerprints of the Gods, was probably a starting point for a lot of people.
I know it was for me.
It was a major thing early on when I first really started looking into this more deeply. I read his book, and it's like, yeah, how is this possible? And so he's talking about Tiwanaku, I think towards the beginning of that, in this whole region in Peru and Bolivia. Or in Bolivia, I've been to Lake Titicaca in Peru. Traveled to Cusco and did the
I'm
tourist thing.
jealous.
What can I say? I was able to go
travel there again together someday. Like, we will do it. We will meet Graham Hancock or Brian Forrester there one day.
I almost went on a trip with Hugh Newman and Brian Forrester with Megalithomania many years ago. And
Nice.
it was in around 2012, 2013. I was signed up for it and everything. And things in my life didn't work out to where I could go on it, but I was signed up for it. I was going to go. And
we
that was.
We still are.
But that was before I started waking up to my own knowledge to share, information that came to me. And I stood on a lot of shoulders in coming to the perspective that I have, and that included Graham Hancock and Hugh Newman and Robert Bauval, who wrote the book The Orion Theory, about how the belt stars were reflected in the pyramids. Those were all guides on my journey, but I had a particular stream, shall we say, to bring in. And so I would call myself aware, but not awake until starting around 2007. And up until about 2007, I didn't have the bigger picture, but I didn't trust the narrative either. I knew there was more. I just didn't know what it was. And it just seems like that I have memories throughout my life that have things that were like out of place. I would see it, I'm go, well, that's interesting, or that's weird. And And so I was aware that way, but it wasn't till about 2007, and I had relocated to Fairbanks, Alaska, where I had lived previously. I got out of a bad relationship, and it's like, okay, it was not a good place for me. And had I
all the way to Alaska to escape, right?
well, it was where I ended up going back. And honestly, since that moment I made that decision, it's like it's been straight up. And it was like I traveled from the East Coast of actually Canada at that time. And it's a long story, but I was in Nova Scotia when I made the breakaway. And I went back to where I lived in Fairbanks between 94 and 99. And so I lived in Fairbanks between 2006 and 2012. And it was like when I made that decision to take back control of my life, because my husband had died, and I was just kind of giving my power away to other people, thinking, it was my time. Well, I ended up in a really bad relationship. And so it was like, when you have a mission, the universe conspires to help you. And that's what happened with me. It's like the moment I made that choice, it's like, okay, I'm going to Fairbanks. Everything worked together to get me to where I am today. And so I returned to Fairbanks in 2006, and I had a group of friends in Fairbanks that kind of were into shamanic practices and things like that, healing and so forth. And one of the ladies was familiar with Drunvalo Melchizedek's work, for anybody that might have heard of him. And it was through my friend that I learned about sacred geometry. And I went to a Flower of Life workshop. And this is a critical piece of information because everything is based on sacred geometry. In our bodies, in our world, in the universe, it's a creation pattern of the universe with the Flower of Life, and you find the Platonic solids within that. So I learned about that around 2007. And other things as well. I started waking up to unity consciousness, and I read Greg Braden and other guides, that's where I learned about Graham Hancock's work and Robert Bauval's work and so on and so forth. And then I found Megalithomania on YouTube around 2010, 2011. And I started watching those. Again, we're talking about megaliths. And I just couldn't get enough information. If it's had history on it, it's like, okay, that's what I'm looking for.
Days and weeks of watching Megalithic Mania, right? It's like when it was first coming out, it's like
so I'm watching it, my tongue's hanging out of my mouth. I'm going, who did this? What's going on here? So I moved from Fairbanks to Oklahoma City around 2012. So I was awake. I would call myself awake by 2012. I was following the end of the Mayan calendar, really absorbed and interested in that, reading books around that. John Major Jenkins, for anybody that's heard of him, Barbara Hand Clow, others. I just wanted to know what's going on. And then when I moved to Oklahoma City, I started going to a Unity Spiritual Life Center there, and I met a Moorish American man. And he just kind of attached himself to me. He didn't say much at all, but we became friends. And then with two other ladies in the church, we would go traveling through the area of Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. And it was during that time that I started to see the ancient civilization in the landscape around me, earthworks and things going on, and it was really starting and seeing megaliths just laying around on the sidewalks. And
Right.
And so
once you see it, you can't unsee it.
see
And
it. I
once
mean,
your eye opens up for the first time to this new reality, it's everywhere.
it's everywhere, and that's why there aren't ever too many people doing this work, because once you see it, and if you have the skills and abilities to, start your own YouTube channel or blog or whatever, we are it. We're the ones we've been waiting for. And, and I think we all have pieces of the puzzle to bring, and we're, kind of, well, this might fit here. They've just given us so much misinformation and disinformation that it's like, we've been lied to completely. So we just have to go with what we're guided to. And I want to give a shout out to 2 smaller channels I talked about on the last live stream I did with you, that are doing phenomenal work. And one is Deeper Conversations with Chad, and then Stephanie McPeak Peterson are doing fantastic work. And we're all, and they're smaller channels. People just saying, okay, yes, I see this. This is what I feel motivated to do. And I know there's a lot of people that are doing that. I mean, I get feedback from people that it's
Helping
just take your
connect with
camera, and starting to say, yeah, well, maybe, that does look like it's engraved and the building's much older, or it does look like there's there used to be the extra number to make the, like, 19, instead of 963, it would read 1963, but the first number looks a little sketchy. There's just, you can't have too many people doing this, and it's just really important. And I know when I got the pieces of the puzzle that I'm sharing, it was like, okay, I got this information to give back to the collective awareness. And so I want to go back to my Moorish American friend. He demonstrated the Moors to me. He didn't, when he would send me information, like Moorish teachers, it was usually when it was in response to something I said or did that was insensitive. And I didn't mean to be. It's out of ignorance. And it's out of ignorance for all of us, because we have no knowledge of the Moors and this ancient civilization. And so one time he came over, we were having a my 2 lady friends and my friend Osiris, we would meet at each other's places and watch like secret space program type things, or other hidden history elements. And
right? But like, there's golden nuggets in all of it.
And he wore a T-shirt, and my friend Anne said, Osiris, why are you wearing an Illuminati T-shirt? Because it looks like the Great Seal of the United States with the the pyramid and the eye and all of that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, Osiris, why are you wearing an Illuminati T-shirt? Didn't say anything. Didn't say anything. And I got an email the next morning that was hot. And for Osiris, that was really hard to get to that point, because just a sweet, loving, ancient soul. And so if you look up the Great Seal of the Moors, which is what his T-shirt had on it, it looks like the symbol on the back of the U.S. $1 bill with Novus Ordo Seclorum underneath it. It was taken from the Great Seal of the Moors. And so the controllers have just kind of inverted all of the symbolism that was originally part of this original civilization, and they just separated it out and turned it into different things. Whereas at one point in time, it was all part of the same thing. And so so when I got that hot email from Osiris, he would send me links for information about the Moors and Moorish teachers. And so I was open to it, because I just wanted to know the truth. And so what comes from that, and the word Moor actually relates back to Mu, ancient Mu, Moors, M-U''urs. And it was like a continuous civilization from ancient Lemuria or Mu through Atlantis up until relatively recently. And I will give examples of that. But the controllers, when they did their reset, they separated everything out and then they turned it into organized religions and conflict,
Divide and conquer.
based on skill, based on religion, based on skin color, and they turned that around so that we would fight each other instead of the people that are actually behind what's taken place, that stole the legacy of the original civilization and claimed it as their own. And that's where you get Western Freemasonry and all of that. And, there's secret societies.
This is just a quick search on DuckDuckGo of Moorish America, and you can see all of these original Moorish esoteric symbols and cultural symbols that the Freemasons, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them all, have subverted and perverted these symbols, just like they did with the swastika in Nazi Germany and stuff like that, destroying these sacred geometries and symbols and cultures.
Right. And then they've proceeded to destroy just about everything. There's a lot of infrastructure still standing, but there's a lot more that has been destroyed, with the World Fairs and a lot of other examples. I mean, even with modern construction projects, if it's not protected in a park and you want to build a road or a housing development, it all gets destroyed and torn up, and there are earthworks and things like that. And I woke up to this in Oklahoma. So, I'm seeing firsthand how that took place. And it was like, a lot of it was experiential. And I know Paul does a lot of field work. When you go out into the field and do research work in situ, you get a lot more information than you just get looking at the internet. And if that's all you have, it's better than nothing. But if you go out and do your own research work, you start to get more pieces of the puzzle. And this is something, because it's been removed from our narrative, it's been removed from literature, books have been rewritten, we've been given this false historical narrative. The only way it can come back is through motivated individuals that act on their impulses. And my sense is that this is information that's just dying to come back in, because without it, we don't know who we are, where we came from, and it's so important to be open, and new information comes in when you let go of your ideas about what's going on here, because I can tell you we've been lied to off the charts. It's just not even, humanity has been treated so badly, and they are, the goal of these beings is to take control of our souls, and our souls are directly connected to our Creator. And so they want that because they don't have that. They can only get that through us, and they can only get it through us if we give it to them. And that's why waking up to information is really important.
Right, and if you don't have an open mind, you'll never see the universe that is everywhere but hidden in plain sight. You have to unveil your third eye to be able to see what has been hidden from us. And thank you so much, Dave's Waffle House and Lynn Jones 250 for the super chats and support. It is appreciated.
And there's an important point, that the beings that are doing this hate the Creator. They hate us, but they're jealous of us, and they're jealous of the Creator. And they tell us that in books like Paradise Lost and other things as well. They've told us they have to tell us. But they've also given us this virtual reality world that we live in, that we live vicariously through movies, and we're distracted by video games and other things, so they've given us all kinds of distractions to keep us from focusing on our connection to our creator. And they want that. I mean, they want human creativity and human energy. And
they feed
they're-
off of suffering almost.
yeah, yes, they do. They completely. At the beginning when we talked about The Matrix before the movie. That's what it's a documentary. I mean, that's what's going on. And it's hard for us to see it because we think we're just going to a movie to be entertained. And so, no, they have to tell us what they're doing, but they don't tell us that they're telling us. So, and just important things to keep in mind, because I firmly believe that they're not going to get away with what they've done, and that we're living in remarkable times. And part of it is the Great Awakening, and that's what the grassroots YouTubers are in this community are doing, is helping that process.
Right, the narrative is officially falling. Like, I hopped on the end of my friend the Alien Scientist stream yesterday, and he was more of like recognizes a lot of the conspiracies, but at the same time also takes a lot of the science sides, but was against the whole jabby jab and on the science of like, hey, this was like a leak from somewhere or an intentional man-made thing from the get-go. But it was on Ben Weinstein channel talking about UFOs the day before. And all of a sudden, we had someone join from the hospital bed who had suffered from a stroke or a seizure, another seizure from getting the jabby jabs, and just showing that, documenting how bad they've messed up with this narrative, and that the truth is now crumbling and shattering their propaganda and their divide and conquer, and that it is this great awakening, and that's why all of these beautiful souls are here with us. Almost 200 people watching right now. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And and it just keeps accelerating more and more. And there's no going back. And it's a great reset of the golden opportunity for a new golden age of enlightenment. And it does not have to always be the doom and gloom. Don't let it be that self-fulfilling negative prophecy. Work together to build your community up.
Right. And I was awake enough that up to about 2016, I was pretty concerned because I knew how dark the dark was by that time. That was what I learned between 2012 and 2016, in addition to uncovering the information that my research is based on. And so, and once I found that, I started doing my own line of research based on the North American star tetrahedron that I found by connecting cities and places in North America that lined up in lines. And I found what's called a star tetrahedron. It's best known as like the Star of David or the Merkaba, with Edmonton, the northern apex,
right,
and
just above me,
and Merida, Mexico, the bottom apex. So it's basically two triangles or tetrahedrons that one's going up and one's going down. And it's a significant shape because it's like the creation shape of the universe. It's like vortex-based mathematics, and the torus, and energy cycling up through us as we breathe, and back down and up and down, and Metatron's cube. So it's all based on that, and so forgive me if I'm rambling here a little bit, but there's a lot of pieces here. So let's take that back to the megaliths, which was my beginning point. And I looked up geopolymer, and I found this article about megalithic blocks in Tiwanaku. So I started on this a while back and got sidetracked. But basically, the conventional theories
Were
suggest
you
that.
wanting to share screen, Michelle? Or
No, I've got this. I
yet? Okay.
printed it out. The conventional theories suggest that the constituent stone blocks were cut from quarries, sometimes remotely located, accurately dressed and lifted into position. So that's the only way we can even conceive that these giant stone blocks came into being and placed. I suggest that there are technologies that we've long forgotten about how the ancient builders built these stone structures. And that's where the geopolymer comes in, which is like an ancient combination of minerals within these blocks. And so the sandstone in Pumapunku and Tiwanaku in Bolivia consist of sandstone grains from a particular site cemented with an amorphous ferrosilicate geopolymer matrix formed by human intervention and addition of alkaline salt from another place in the area. So these big stone blocks were man-made, and particularly in Peru, we're talking massive megaliths. And then you also have, like at Sacsayhuaman, you have these massive stone blocks that are perfectly fitted together, and some of them have angles. It's like a jigsaw puzzle.
They're earthquake proof. They've survived so much, and like as you're telling your story, I'm just getting this so many parallels for my own timeline and understanding these things and like seeing them, and like there's no other way other than geopolymer.
So I want to give some examples of some things that I've studied, and I'm going to go ahead and present.
Yep.
Let's see. So this is from my most recent video upload last night, and it's part 2 of a 2-part series that I actually did about 3 years ago. And I put it together. I had referenced it in a conversation that I had with Deeper Conversations with Chad, and so it kind of prompted me to go ahead and do it. And 3 years later, there's a lot of other things that are starting to connect about this, but this was following a long distance alignment that I had found. It's one of the first alignments that I found after I found the North American star tetrahedron and extended the lines and wrote down the places that were lining up in lines and circles. And so that was about 1920 spreadsheet pages that started me on this journey. And where my initial research began was going and looking at these alignments and looking at each place. And then from that process, I started to get bigger pieces of the picture coming into focus, because I was seeing how the controllers came in and took them over. And I found star forts all over the place. It was like when the colonial era first started, they were going right for the star forts. And the whole narrative that we're given about how the Spanish colonized the Philippines and the Indies, and England and Britain colonized North America and other places, had a lot to do with these grid lines. And so I just want to give this example about the Lena River pillars, because when I first tracked this alignment that this series is based on, I was just looking at what was there, and around Tixie, what came up was the Lena River pillars. And when you look at it from this view, you can kind of see that it looks like masonry.
Right? Big time.
You don't see it as much from this, and they can kind of get away with calling all of this kind of thing a natural feature. But this is findable if you look for it in a search. It's got alternating layers of limestone, marlstone, dolomite, and slate.
And how is that possible? The alternating layers of those three. It's just like I've taken geology, and it's so frustrating because it's like, no, it's impossible what you guys are claiming. And then they even draw it that everything is all brick shaped in their textbooks, like, oh yeah, nature just makes everything out of blocks. No, it doesn't.
Right. And I've got other examples along this alignment of places that look like this. But the only explanation that we're given is that it's natural. That's it. They go through the ice ages and 100 million thousand years ago, and these things were formed by the advancing and retreating of glaciers, and they have explanations for anywhere else in the world is called a dolmen, but in North America it's called a glacial erratic, and you have one big huge big huge boulder sitting on top of like 3 or 4 little ones. They've given us this whole false narrative with to explain all of this man-made stuff as natural, and they're pretty consistent about it. No other explanation given. And that was in the picture I just showed was in Russia near Tixi.
And there's a lot of them up in that area all throughout there. It's crazy how many, really, and the scale of them, and that they're also in North America too, like in Montana megaliths and the Alberta ones that I'm going to be going to check out very soon. And it seems almost like those are leftovers from the time of titans or giants or something one size larger, and where the Atlanteans may be more giant human than what we are today. Even it's who knows.
Yeah, and the examples I give are just like the tip of the iceberg. There's just so much everywhere that it's mind-boggling. That particular alignment that I just showed goes down through Alberta, Yukon Territory, Alaska, Manitoba, Ontario, and the Whitehorse Canyon, I don't want to say it's the Miles Canyon in Whitehorse, has similar looking rock features, as does the Wilmette Canyon, which is in Ontario, around that area. So, again, the only explanation we're given, it's natural, and this is how it happened. And, we were talking about megaliths lying around all over the place. People just walk right on by it because they're not tuned into it. And it's just, this perfectly cut and shaped megalithic stone. They're all over, where I was living in Oklahoma City. They're all over where I live in Arizona, in front of houses, in front of stores. There's a pile of them about 200 or 300 yards. I'm not sure how many meters that is from where I live. Some of them with drill holes, just laying around. We don't see them for what they are because we've never been told that. And, perceptually, one of the images that I like to use is a picture of the like all-seeing eye or something. It says, "Obey, we control your perception." Well, that's how they've done it.
Yeah.
Hitting
everything in plain sight.
Completely removed it from our awareness, and then they give it back to us in movies.
And call it pareidolia, right? You're just pareidolia up. You're just paranoid pareidolia. Don't trust your instincts or the fact that those are faces looking back at you. No.
Yeah. So we're kind of moving into the alchemy area of yours, because I'm going to now show another video I did, and this was also several years ago, because after I was tracking these alignments, I started to have this collection of places like what I'm going to show you. And so, again, things that we see as natural features have solstice alignments.
Right? Exactly. Like, sorry, nature's not going to do that.
So how'd that happen? Winter, this is I want to say it's during the winter solstice in December and January that the light comes through Keyhole Arch perfectly at Pfeiffer Beach at Big Sur in California.
Like maybe in Middle Earth that will happen naturally, but not in this Earth.
So I'm just going to give some examples to show that this isn't just buildings, and I'm going to go into that, but this goes back to what we would call ancient and what we see as natural features in the landscape. But you've got things like this going on. And this was a blog post and video I put together several years ago called Ancient and Modern Evidence for the Perfect Alignment of Heaven and Earth Worldwide. And, you know, this is more going to show that everything is in perfect alignment with the heavens all over the earth. And this civilization was in perfect alignment with each other, with different places. And you just have to read between the lines a lot when it comes to finding this, but you also have to have the right paradigm. And if you go with everything being random and disconnected, it falls apart. It doesn't make sense. And so a lot of good research has been done, but it's really important to let's just say see the big picture of what I'm calling an ancient civilization, a Moorish civilization that was, you know, in perfect alignment geometrically and in all the other ways. I don't see this as a warlike civilization at all. I don't think it even would have been possible to have this level of integration. And I'll give you more examples. I'm not just talking out of my butt.
Oh, I know. Like you're just complimenting so many that I have also given. That it's the level of macro terraforming involved in each one of these examples you're showing is just astounding.
So this is coming up in Kansas, and it's actually called the Monument Rocks National Natural Landmark, otherwise known as the Chalk Pyramids in Gove County, Kansas, where you can see another solar alignment at these places.
Like those are archways built for purposes of solar alignments.
Right. And that's what they were, that's why they were doing it. It was for lining everything up. Perfect balance. This was a highly sophisticated civilization and higher consciousness. The people that lived there knew what they were there for. They weren't unsure where they came from or what they were supposed to be doing there. They knew what they were there for. They were, you know, building this beautiful civilization, and they were reconnecting with their creator. And so that was what was going on. It, you know, they weren't fighting each other. They weren't anything. They were creating beauty and harmony.
And then in harmony, right? Able to build the peace in heaven on earth.
And then, you know, great evil saw an opportunity to come in and crash the party, and boy, did they ever. Boy, did they ever. So right. Let me give you some more examples. There's another one in England here. About a year or so ago, when I changed my WordPress plan, I ended up losing some photos from some of my earlier videos or earlier blog posts, but most of them are still in here. Dirtle Door near Lulworth, England, and Dorset also has the same kind of winter solstice alignment going on. So these arches, it's all about connecting what's going on in the heavens with the earth.
As above, so below. And nature doesn't do this naturally.
And then you have things like this at Arches National Park in Utah. And that's a place that has over 2,000 natural stone arches.
Arches National Park, 2,000 of them in this park. Or hey, maybe this is a ruined city from a time ago because, oh, it just happened to erode all of, like, no, it's the statistical impossibility of these claims that they make and just the cognitive dissonance that people go along with it. It's mind-boggling.
And statistics is a good word. So let's look at this example where you see the feature in the background that's framed pretty much in the middle of that opening in the stone. Right? I mean,
Right, perfect
you
alignment,
see
right in
where
the
I'm
middle.
coming from
Yeah.
with that? Well,
Oh,
you
yeah.
have the same thing going on at the Garden of the Gods in Colorado, where you have it perfectly framed with the other features in the background. This is a picture that I took when I was in Peru. I did make it to Marumuru. That's mine. But again, I was just starting to put this together, and when I saw that at the Garden of the Gods in Colorado, I thought of that.
That's amazing.
And then this is in Washington State at the Olympic National Park, the hole in the wall at Rialto Beach. So you've got another perfect framing going on. And this is again in Kansas, the place in Kansas I just showed, Monument Rocks. This is Double Arch Trail in Kentucky, where it's framing something like right in the center. And then I think I showed that already. These two I already showed. And then once upon a time, the ley lines were actually on the maps.
Yes.
So this is a Catalan atlas from about 1385 of the Mallorcan Cartographic School. And so I've already said it, we're taught to believe all this is the result of natural and random processes. But my belief is that it represents an intentional terraforming of the earth from ancient times by master builders to create harmony, beauty, and balance based on geometric principles. Okay.
I couldn't agree more.
I've been studying all of this for almost 5 years intensively, and so I've got a lot of knowledge that's just, I may not remember exactly what I put on something, but I can know where I can go find it when I do the research for it. So this is the Mallorcan Cartographic School in southern France, the Balearic Islands in that area. And there's something really special going on there that we can only guess at what we're talking about, but Mallorca and the islands off the coast of Spain, the Balearic Islands. A lot to be found in all these places, but I want to start out with the example of the Palace of the Kings of Mallorca in Perpignan, France. I found this place on Tracking and Alignment. You find that same framing going on. And I got a lot more examples.
And just like how the architecture, all of these architectures, well, yes, they are man-made, and yes, they do align up with the solstices and the equinoxes. So how do these supposed natural arches and features also include these same alignments? It's preposterous.
It's truly mind-blowing. So, this is the example in France. Here's another example in Spain, in Seville. So this is Gijón in Spain. Seville, Spain, which is clearly Moorish architecture. More examples of that. The Alhambra in Granada, you've got the same, perfect symmetry going on. You have it going on at Oxford University in England with the archway framing the whole big building perfectly.
Right?
You have it at Manners, you have the same thing going on, this archway framing the gate. You have the Tower Bridge in London. Same thing.
Much better chance that those supposed natural ones doing the same stuff are just the ruins of leftover original ones of what you're showing right here.
Yeah, either that or intentional terraforming. It's probably or likely a combination of ruined infrastructure, or it's meant to be there doing something. And again, we don't have any concept of this original civilization, so we can just put puzzle pieces together to figure out what was going on. But I've got more examples. You've got the Eiffel Tower framed here by whatever this is, but it's another example here. You've got this military school framed by the archway of the Eiffel Tower. In Bavaria, you have the archway framing these buildings here. And another example, this is also in the same place in Germany, Landshut. And then you have, this is one of my favorites here, the Fisherman's Bastion in Budapest, Hungary. You've got this archway framing this building, but then you've got these archways perfectly framing the Hungarian Parliament building in the background.
Oh, wow.
I mean, like perfectly.
It's Inception.
And there it is again.
Frame.
So this is in Vatican City. You can see St. Paul's Basilica through the archway. This archway in Italy on the Ulysses Riviera between Rome and Naples. You've got something going on there. This location at a monastery in Ethiopia. So you've got this at Jordan and Petra in Jordan. The Treasury building, and it's framed by an archway. And that is a massive building.
That looks like the in-between, almost like, the missing link right there in between the natural and the man-made alignments.
Right, and that's cut out of stone, that location.
Right, or it was all poured as geopolymer.
We don't know how they did it, but what they left behind is just incredible. The Blue Mosque in Isfahan, Iran, same phenomenon.
That place is so mind-bogglingly intense.
You have this mosque in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. It's just beautiful architecture.
It really is.
This is in Oman, Muscat, Oman, at a mosque. This is the Taj Mahal in Agra, India. There's another one this is in Delhi, India. Sorry, I'm missing some pictures. This is in the country of Georgia. And Chechnya.
The original criteria.
This is in China. Same idea. In Indonesia, this is before and after, or I did have a before and after picture of the of this particular mosque in Banda Aceh, which got submerged by that tsunami, Boxing Day tsunami.
Oh.
But you've got the archway framing that perfectly. This is off the coast of Brazil, on the island of Fernando de Noronha, which is loaded with star forts. You've got the same framing going on with the arch.
Right, look at that.
This is in Guadalajara, Mexico. This is Stanford University in California.
All right.
Okay, this is Jefferson Memorial in Gretna, Louisiana. So you've got the archway, and then you've got the courthouse framed perfectly. And this is Rollins College. This is where my grandparents went to college, or where they met, in Winter Park, Florida.
That's the creation of Michelle right there. It's aligned.
Jeez. I guess, how do we pick our families, or do they pick us? I don't know.
Right? I think it's a little bit of both.
So, so anyway, like I said here, I don't know where this picture was taken, but there certainly appears to be a solar alignment occurring in the center of the arches.
Undeniable solar alignment.
So, I mean, when I talk about that kind of stuff, oh, let me show you something else here real quick.
No worries.
So before we started talking, I mentioned lighthouses with solar alignments. I'm looking at your question. I am Kairos. I've looked at San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge, and I know there's starports and lighthouses there. It's an interesting place. So I just wanted to share these alignments with lighthouses where you've got the same kind of phenomenon going on, and not just one lighthouse. I mean, this is not a case of at the right angle with the right with the camera. It's like this is consistently found.
Right,
and
over and over and over again.
And I absolutely believe there's a lot more going on with lighthouses than we're told. So there's that example, and you can look it up. I just typed in lighthouses with solar and lunar alignments, but even if you just type in lighthouses, you can find examples.
Yeah, most images of the lighthouses at night have like the moon right over top of it every time.
Right. And one more along those lines that I want to show you. I've talked about it at different places in my work, but not all in one place. You've got the same thing going on with these Capitol buildings.
Yes.
Right.
So,
again, the point is this is not random.
Exactly. Like this built intentionally for these astrological
not
alignments.
Random. Which is really the point that I wanted to make with those.
The big door in the middle, and then the one on the left and the one on the right next to it, a little bit smaller. That's the solstice, the two equinoxes, and the solstice, and that's a astrological architectural alignment every single time in those buildings.
Yeah. So again, when I talk about this civilization the way that I do, it's just not like guessing. It's like this is almost 5 years of looking at all these places and finding all this stuff and saying, okay, there's something to this. And there's a war for our consciousness going on. We're in a war, a spiritual war. And it's like and we're people are waking up, but there's still a lot more to wake up.
Exactly. They're trying to reset us every single day. That great reset they're trying to impose right now and indoctrinate every day through the schools, through the academies, and you have to be aware and you have to be self-educated.
Right. And I see Sherry's comment about the lighthouse for sale. You find things like that. You find also find starports for sale. Get turned into hotels and things like that.
One day, I swear, Michelle, maybe 10 years from now, if we keep growing, getting the word out there, eventually we will have our own Starfort Island hotel getaway where we will do trips with Brian Forrester and Graham Hancock and the rest. It will be a good time.
I love your ambition, Bernie, but I don't know.
Right, one day at a time.
I would rather go on a world tour.
Yeah, exactly.
Of obscure places. I mean, we're not even talking about the well-known ones. We're talking about places that used to have starports, but there aren't there anymore. There's a Cairo, Illinois, at the tip of southern Illinois, where the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, converge, or canals. Let's call them canals. What they are.
Yeah.
And the there used to be a Fort Defiance there. Well, not anymore. You can go see the sign. But I found starports at these river confluences. Pittsburgh has two, but not just on one continent. I found them in other places as well. Whether there's a switch point, which it might have been, or a power point. the patterns are there, and they don't even come close to matching what we're taught about them. Everything's random, built for the French and Indian War or the War of 1812 or British fears of French invasion during the reign of Emperor Napoleon III, which is when a lot of the star forts in the British or English Channel were said to have been built.
Right.
In the Isle of Wight.
Oh, these magical Napoleons. That's who built it all.
So King Henry VIII has a couple attributed to him. There's a lot of cover stories going on, and I just,
lot of facades.
there's a lot not to trust in the historical narrative. They've just given us garbage.
It's so true.
And called it truth.
Right, and it's like the victors write the history books. We all know that, and yet we've believed them for so long.
And I have a hard time calling them the victor because they got it by deception and
cheating,
cataclysm,
and
they just
destroying.
I think they caused a cataclysm, and they just came in and they dug out enough infrastructure to restart civilization and rig the system to benefit themselves. And I think the 19th century was just horror for humanity, just absolute horrors. Between the asylums and the other things going on, it was not a good time.
Stealing all the kids from the parents and putting the parents into the asylums or into the wars, and then shipping the babies off to the other side of the realm. And
they were doing something, either growing babies or like with the infantariums, but I think it was more than that, because I think some of it was probably for repopulation, and probably some of it was for harvesting, unfortunately.
But once again, that matrix is the truth is stranger than fiction.
Exactly. So anyway, there's just so many aspects to what's taken place here, and had they had to have our consent, they could have just come in and taken everything over, right? Why did they do this? Why did they go through such an elaborate process to deceive us and to take control over our lives, to mind control us through programming? They did it because they have to have our consent. So the only way they can get our consent is to lie to us and have us agree to what they're doing. And because really we're sovereign beings, really truly. And as soon as we realize we have our power, they're done. So they've tried to convince us that they have that power over us.
Right, to give up your own free will, your sovereignty between you and your creator. And as soon as you do that, you turn into a slave because you've given up your godly existence.
And that's what we are to them. But we became that because in reality, we're inextricably linked with our creator. And that's what they want. They want that.
Want to try to convince us that their parasitical selves are the Lord and Creator and not the truth.
Yeah.
Not our own divine beings.
But the other thing is, when you start looking at a lot of this stuff closely in the historical record, without the internet, we wouldn't be able to go and do our own research. So they got away with it most of, the last couple hundred years. But the stories they tell us about how things came to existence are just ridiculous. It doesn't add up. And that's where critical thinking comes in, and that was removed from the school curriculum around 1851, 1852. It used to be a part of it. So, this would probably be a good place to kind of segue a little bit into your area of expertise, Bernie, because we're talking about alchemy and, ways of working with the elements that, we can't even begin to speculate on, because we're not given all the information that we need, and we're told that alchemists were medieval scientists trying to turn base metals into gold. And
Right.
I went through a little part at the end of the video I put up last night about the periodic table of the elements, and I also mentioned Walter Russell's and a couple of other things. And I know you know a lot about that kind of stuff, so why don't you go ahead?
All right, I will just have to switch it over here, and yes, the alchemy and Walter Russell, it shows that geometry has so much more to do with the structure of our realm and the universe, that there's these symmetries in the octaves and in the platonic solids here that take shape, and the alchemical symbols are in fact far advanced, lost technology, and that when you look at alchemy symbols like this, those are also electromagnetic symbols, and that in fact there's this universal language of energy, of structure, and of the alchemists that we were convinced to scoff at and to ridicule, and that it was nothing, but in fact it actually looks like it is the building blocks of reality. And it's crazy. They say that the alchemists were responsible for discovering chemistry, inventing like alcohols, inventing medicines, pharmaceuticals, essentially, and everything. Where that part is correct, but then they've convinced us all that they made all these crazy discoveries, but they're absolutely bonkers, out of their mind. Oh, thank you so much for the support, Colleen. Super sticker, $12. And that what they have done is removed the spiritual side of alchemy that connected the metaphysical realm with the physical realm, and made this science of the West, the science of today, of academia, completely physical and completely inept and retarded to the grander conscious universe and creation that is everything. And that in the East, like Eastern alchemy, Eastern philosophy, Eastern medicine, they still include all of these different esoteric and metaphysics aspects and energies and sciences into their practices, into their society, into their understanding, and into their daily lives. And it's because they haven't lost that original touch and connection with it through this alchemy.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that when we're kind of taught to believe that it's just us. we're finite, we're not connected to other things. I have come along a lot more to a flat earth model because of information I found. I didn't start there, but I have to be honest, my passion is this original civilization and the earth grids. That's what drives my work, and so I'm a lot more comfortable with that whole model, because if we're not a spinning ball, then everything's spinning around us. So it's like, okay, I got that, the tree of life and all of that kind of thing. So I'm just giving that as an example of the kinds of things that have polarized our existence because of misinformation and disinformation deliberately done. And so where I'm going with that is we are all connected. We're all connected to everything. So how is that possible? And, based on everything we've been taught, it's not. We're just a collection of chemical reactions. But I think there's a lot more to those chemical reactions that connect us to source and everything else. And we have a hard time seeing that we're not just, we're more than what we think we are. We're multidimensional beings.
Absolutely.
And we live in a holographic universe. So how does that work? How does that happen?
Right, 100%. And like that, the holographic universe, like, is it this matrix dimension, this fractal matrix dimension of the multiverse of dimensions that we do exist in, and that consciousness exists in and is formed in and out of, and there's just so much more to it.
Right. And when I first started doing my own research, it was kind of a little bit from the spiritual side, I guess you could say, in a way. I mentioned at the very beginning, I learned about sacred geometry, and around the same time I was learning about that, I was reading Greg Braden's work, and he talks about the holographic universe and a lot of the spiritual side of things and how the truth is found in ancient texts. For those of you who are familiar with Marco Rodin.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So his discovery he found in the Baha'i sacred texts. It's just, it's there. And it sure looks like, with the historical narrative studies that I've done, is that everything kind of started coming in. All the new early modern stuff started coming in around 1450, 1500. And that's what we're told. Now, at what point history becomes real, I'm not really sure. But I think there's a whole lot of backfill where they kind of constructed a new history based loosely on real people.
Right? Like, exactly. Especially like that Napoleon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like, oh God, like, no. I really don't think that's how it was.
Right. Again, with everything I've gone over, I do not see a worldwide civilization that was at war with each other. I'm not seeing that. Nor am I seeing
a harmonic building people. They were building bridges. They were building pyramids. They were not attacking, destroying each other.
Right. And nor am I seeing lots of little resets. I'm seeing one massive reset. And again, it's a continuous integrated civilization from what would be considered modern to what would be considered relatively recent, or ancient to what would be considered relatively modern. And then they flipped everything on its head with their reset.
So kind of like this Mandela effect, maybe like this shimmer of the original inflection point that they came in and catastrophized everything not that long ago at all.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm open to fallen angels and other beings that the idea of paradise lost being predictive programming and telling us what they did. And I've been doing some research along those lines. Something major happened, and they got into everything. They're still in everything, which I think is why it's taking them so long to be held accountable. Because they don't want to get caught. They don't want to get caught. They'll double down on their lies.
Right? And accountability is key, and that for everyone out there, you have to be accountable first with yourselves, with your family, your friends, and the world. And it's the only way for us to have an honest future and an honest life. And that is how we will beat these parasites, is by being honest and accountable, and coming forward with the truth and figuring out the past to build a better future.
Right. As much as possible, speaking your truth, because, you know, I can't even talk about this stuff with my family. I mean, they're pretty programmed, and most of the people I know aren't ready for this yet, which is a nice thing about a online cyber community, because it seems like people, you know, find information like this when they're ready. And you can't just tell somebody this if they're not there.
Right? Like if someone is not ready to wake up, they will resist it at all costs. And in fact, oftentimes you'll create division within your own family, just trying to enlighten or what you think saves them with the truth. And it's that people have to be able and ready to wake up on their own, and that you have to discuss it with those that are awake and ready, and just put the information out there for your loved ones when they are ready, but don't try to force it on anyone when they're not.
Yeah, it's a non-starter, and could actually be more damaging than helpful. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I you know, I would call myself pretty open-minded, and I had to process through a lot of things that I heard, say 10 years ago, that I'm like, well, okay, well, all right, you know, David Icke stuff. But I'm like, okay, yeah, you know, but it took
Right?
me a number of years to get to the point where I could see it and understand it. And then when I first heard it, it's like, oh, that kind of sounds a little out there. But I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying I'm not ready to embrace that yet. And now I just know that the evil is far worse than we can even imagine. I mean, I know a lot of stuff, and I know I don't know a lot of the really ugly, dirty stuff, but I know it's there.
Right?
You know,
And
the stuff
it's
that we don't talk about.
and it's it needs to eventually be exposed and come out and dealt with, but at the same time, until that time is ready, you just can't get into it, or you get stuck in the depressing aspects of it and the horridness of it. It's like traumatize yourself with it, that you know, it will come out, it will be dealt with, but we'll leave that to the professionals and the actual you know, people that will deal with it.
Right. And there's a lot of other people on YouTube that do, you know, so it's like not my thing.
And Rumble and Odyssey,
but it's
and
not putting my head in the sand and not wanting to acknowledge it. It's like, I'll leave that for somebody else, because this is my thing, what I've been talking about.
Exactly. And still always listen to it to know that it's out there, but just won't focus on it.
Right. But we're living in an exciting time. I'm personally very optimistic that we're watching things play out, and that God wins, and that we get front row seats to the hero's journey being successful, with us being the hero, humanity, the creator through humanity, the phoenix. Right. You know, however you want to call it, you know, that there's kind of a death process before a rebirth process. And part of that, I think, is kind of dying to what we thought we knew. And, you know, I wish that the world I thought I was growing up in, and I'll be 60 this summer, I wish that was, you know, what it was. but we're living at that time where it's becoming clearer and clearer that something's really wrong. What's going on right now, something is really wrong and upside down, and we're being gaslighted and all this other stuff with what's going on in the news, what's going on around the world. That something is horribly wrong. And that's the nice thing about being a truther now, is that it's no longer, you know, out there as much as the conspiracy theory and the people can start to see what's going on in front of them. And I think that's part of the great
true.
Because I think the controllers thought that we wouldn't wake up and that people would continue to believe the lies. But when they start pushing these crazy agendas on everybody and misrepresenting information, you know, things that have happened even this last week, you know, or big problems that aren't getting addressed.
Yeah, very good point.
You know, chemical releases, you know, things like that that are that aren't being dealt with, that are being ignored. Something's wrong, and it's because there's a non-human, anti-human agenda in play or playing out. You know,
right?
So
yeah, exactly. That will influence every single time, trying to get us to divide and conquer each other over and over and over as much as possible.
Right. You know, just tell the same lie over and over and over again, and that's going to be their undoing, because now it's quite obvious that I'm thinking of events of the last couple of days, that what they're trying to push in a narrative is
ridiculous. It's so
fast backwards.
Like, how? Like,
I'm talking about the TG stuff that's going on right now.
Right.
The last couple of days in the news. You know. So there's just a lot of stuff that's coming out that, and I think this is part of the Great Awakening, that normal people are finally going to say, wait a minute, what's going on?
And it's happening more and more every day, just every single day. The stories that they come out with, they're more and more unbelievable, further from reality, more of this clown world, this backwards ass reality that just doesn't make sense. And it's their undoing 100%.
Right. Because it finally gets pretty clear. There's the rules for radicals. I can't think of the name of the the figure. My brain's not working. But anyway, there's this playbook that they use, but that's their only playbook. And they've been very effective with it up to a certain point. But now that they've lost control of the narrative, you know, it is starting to fall apart.
Right? They just have that one play. Alinsky,
that's it. Saul Alinsky. Rules for radicals. That's their one playbook. And beyond that, they're lost because they don't understand us. They don't understand love. And they just don't understand us. And they just want to control us and, you know, get what they can from us.
Right? They want to suck that energy out, but no more energy for the parasites. Put your energy into building a better new reality for you, your loved ones, and the future of all humanity.
Right. So Paul was not able to join us tonight. There's something that came up, and so we're going to reschedule with Paul next week.
Exactly.
And it's hard to find a time that works for all four of us, given we've got one in Australia, two in North America, and one in England. So it's a bit challenging to find the right time for the four of us, but we're going to work on it.
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of synergies with my work and Paul's work.
Yeah, and we will bring that together this time next week, 1 week from right now. And we did a pretty good episode today, Michelle. I'm glad that you're like, no, we're still doing it, because that was quite the presentation. It was awesome. Anything else you want to cover before we wrap this one up? Or are we good for today? Oh, hello.
This is just the tip of the iceberg of a really big subject, and anybody that's motivated to start looking around your community or follow your own passion, we can use you. It's not hard. If I can do this, anybody can do this. I'm not kidding. I never blogged in my life until 2018, and I was going to put out one video, and somebody subscribed, and I thought, well, geez, I need to make videos now. And so I found the easiest video making program that I could find and started to turn my blog post into videos. And I'd never done it before, and I just felt like it was important to get this information out any way possible. And I've been doing it for almost 5 years.
Right? And it's turned into a whole new life of amazingness, and that we need the boots on the ground of wherever you are. If you're by a star fort, you're by a castle, you're by a megalith, a dolmen, a glacial erratic even, just take a little video with your camera or your cell phone and upload it to your YouTube channel and share. Or like Michelle's saying, create a little blog post. It's both a self-bettering fulfillment that you'll feel yourself in achieving it when you do it each time, and you're helping build the evidence for all of the community.
I am Kairos. If you haven't seen my last 2 videos on that subject of finding mining and mineral occurrences on alignments, I would say at least watch those. And my area of expertise is not the actual mechanics of it. Mine seems to be grid lines and maybe being able to see the bigger picture just because of my unique life experiences. I mean, one of my first experiences, I was about 6 years old, and my dad practiced softball. There was a church softball team, and there was an elementary school next to the church where the team would practice. I wasn't interested in that, so I ran off down into the woods next to the field. And my memory from that is that there were these big, gigantic blocks of stone down there that were pretty cool to play with around. Didn't think anything of it until I started doing this work, and then realizing that the home that I lived on between the ages of probably 11 and 19 was right next to a golf course on top of what I now see as a flat top pyramid.
That's so cool.
My family's home was on the flatter end of it, but all the neighbors' houses, there was a bend, and they had really steep slopes for their backyards. We actually had like a flat front yard and backyard. But it looked like a flat top pyramid. And then the elementary school I went to was right next to where we lived. And there were earthworks all over that too. So it's like, I was around all this stuff growing up, and who knows, maybe I got an extra dose of energy for my bedroom or something like that. I don't know.
Definitely did.
But it's like things like that where I kind of started finding things in the back of my head. And then when I went to England in 2010, I was living in Fairbanks at the time, and I went with another lady who wasn't awake. We had 2 different experiences traveling together. But we went to where my mother's family was from in a little town called Bradford on Avon. And I had learned about the flower of life just a couple of years before that, but I still was just kind of starting to wake up to a lot of this stuff. And I went to this one building that I knew about from family records called the Threshing Barn. And so I just kind of went there, experienced it, and on my way out, I looked to my left, and there was a flower of life carved into the stone. And I don't even think it was a complete flower of life. I just remember
Really?
seeing it. And I had only learned about the flower of life like a year or two before that. So, those seem to be that's why it feels like it's part of my journey, my spiritual path or whatever, because from a young age, I just started noticing things that were out of place.
I'm very similar myself with that, and with the pyramids, the flat top pyramids too. I'm gonna be going to Drumheller in a couple of months here. World famous Badlands, the dinosaur or dragons, the bones throughout the Royal Tyrrell Museum. But what I have figured out, and I'm 99.9999% sure, is that in the backyards of the towns of Drumheller, pretty much every third yard has these flat top pyramids with alternating layers of charcoal, red sand, yellow sand, charcoal back and forth. And, this whole town could be a lost pyramid city.
And that is repeated over and over and over and over and over
Right?
again.
Exactly.
I mean, I saw it in Oklahoma City. I've seen it in other places as well. These neighborhoods have perfectly rounded earthworks for their front yards or backyards or whatever. I saw that with my brother's house in Oklahoma. That when I started to wake up to this, when I was living there, I'm like, wait a minute, you really don't have to go far. And it's just, once you wake up to it, like we said earlier, you can't not see it.
Right? It's exactly. And it's like, well, you better be prepared for it, because once your mind is open, you see it everywhere, and it is literally everywhere. And we'll have to do an episode also on connecting more into the Montana megaliths and geoglyphs that I've been they connect with the Alberta ones, obviously, but that there's more and more information coming out about these Montana ones and their alignments too.
And I could just say the ley lines are huge. It's just huge information, and I believe it's a form of consciousness. Maybe our consciousness, maybe God
Right,
consciousness.
yeah.
I mean, there's something truly important and magical about these ley lines. There's a lot connected to it.
And why they build their cathedrals on them and their palaces on them, and the chakras and the crown chakra, and then the crowns that they wear up on their pedestals, on their the thrones and whatnot, or where these ley lines intersect. So is this advanced technology of mind control even that the rulers might have once had?
I think what they did was they reverse engineered the grid system to become a control system instead of benefiting all life everywhere. I think that's what they did. They just, these beautiful schools, whether elementary schools or high schools or colleges, that aren't ornate, became schools, banks, museums. They were turned into control systems, whereas before it was all part of this free energy grid generating system. Free energy grid and energy generating system.
Right, and we need to get back to that because it's just too expensive.
West San, I think it's LEY, not LAY.
Yeah, LEY. Yes, ley lines. Yep. LEY.
Well, appreciate being on, Bernai.
Okay.
And everybody being here today. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we will wrap this one up at just over an hour and a half here. We will definitely be back next week with Paul. He does apologize that he wasn't able to make it. Last week when we were supposed to do it, you had to rebook. So this week he had something come up. So next week it will happen 100%. And this was still a very excellent episode. Thank you so much for your time, Michelle, and for everyone being here. We love you all, and we will catch you on the next one. And go subscribe to Michelle if you haven't already.